We've all heard, don't judge a book by its cover. And by now, we've also probably heard the counter arguments to this of why we should, in fact, judge a book by its cover. But in this video, we are going back to not judging books by their covers, but instead judging them by a few words and phrases picked by booksellers. It's time to go on a blind date with a book or three. If you don't know what I'm talking about, some bookshops do this thing called a blind date with a book, where they wrap up the books in like brown wrapping paper. They make it look all old and fancy, and on the wrapping paper on the outside they've written what is inside the book, what they can expect, but no information about title, author, or the book cover, obviously, and no blurb. And so just that bookseller's brief description is what you have to go off. And I thought this would be really fun to try, to get out of my comfort zone a bit with reading and read some things that maybe I hadn't heard of before or wouldn't pick up if I had seen it in a bookshop. And so, without further ado, let's go book shopping. It's going to be a very summer reading vlog, although I wouldn't necessarily describe any of these books as summer reads. But if there's going to be lots of reading outside and on holiday, then you've got to protect your skin, which leads me nicely to this video sponsor, Skin & Me. I've been using my Skin & Me Daily Doser for 3 years now, and I have never felt better in my skin. And I also don't wear makeup like 99% of the time. It is simple and effective skincare personalized to my skin and my goals. It is designed by dermatologists, so it just takes out all of that guesswork for me in terms of ingredients and how much product to use. I've always been someone who gets very overwhelmed with all of the high street options, so this works so well for me, especially because I can tell them when I sign up and do the online consultation about my skin and send my pictures. I can also tell them if I'm pregnant or breastfeeding or trying to conceive, which I currently am, TTC, and so they will only put in ingredients that are safe to use. And that whole process of signing up is super easy, and they will send you your daily doser. You use these in the evening and they last for 28 days, and you can see the little days on the tube. You just twist it until it clicks, and the amount of product that comes out is all you need. And as it is summer, still hanging on in there, holidays or not, and whether it's actually sunny or not, it's important to me to feel confident in my skin and also protect it. I don't want to be burning if I'm outside reading for hours. And the Daily Doser is super compact to travel with, and you know you're not going to run out when you're on holiday because you can see exactly how many days of product you have left, and Skin & Me always sends you your next one automatically when you're about a week before finishing off your last one. I also have the Skin & Me Daily Moisturizer that has SPF 50 in it, and they also have a SPF 50 sunscreen. And if you use my code WITTONYT8, then you'll get your first daily dose for $4.99 instead of the usual £24.99, plus free samples of the Skin & Me cleanser, moisturizer, and SPF. So thank you so much to Skin & Me for sponsoring this video. Let's get reading. Okay, I have the books that I picked. That was a very fun process. I did not have a system other than going off vibes. I do not know how to explain what I'm drawn towards, what I'm not drawn towards, but I will try and give it a go with the 3 books that I picked. So I'm going to show you what they say on the outside, and then we're going to open them and judge the books by their covers, finally. So the first one that we have is the chunkiest one. It is a big one, and it says, Professional Liars, Venetian Fantasy, Adventure, Gritty, and flamboyant. And you know I love me some fantasy, but then the mixture of all of the other things, like the fact that it's gritty and flamboyant, intriguing. And then the professional liars, so con artists, something like that, I don't know. So that is the first book. What could it be? I have no idea. Then our next one is a little bit smaller, and this one says eccentric aunt, dull banker, travel, comedy, subversive. And I did try and go with a bit of a mix. There were like other fantasy magical realism books in there, but I can't tell from this one if it's like a rom-com, like if our eccentric aunt and our dull banker are gonna fall in love, or if they're gonna become unlikely friends on this subversive, funny travel adventure. I don't know. But again, intrigued. And then finally, this one I picked as more of a wild card. I actually feel a bit nervous about reading this one. So it's another little one, and it says hallucinations, Scotland/South Africa, risque, blackest humour, and just rather disturbing. But that being there, I now have to know. And I really loved Mona Arwood's books, which are kind of like feminist horror. I don't know how to describe them, but I've read Bunny and Rouge. I really loved them, and they are very disturbing. So this one just intrigued me as a bit of a stepping out of my comfort zone, and yeah, feeling a bit anxious. But I also just read this and I was like, I need to know. I need to know. So those are my 3 books, and let's open them. Before I open them, put your guesses below. Like, have you read any of these? Do you think you know what they are? Go on, give me your best guesses. I wanted to sit down to open them. Okay, so our first Venetian fantasy. Let's go. I love that these are like packaged up in like brown wrapping paper. That touch just, I don't know. I like it. I enjoy the gimmick. I enjoy it. Can't get into the string. Don't have scissors with me. We're just gonna have to persevere. There we go. I've no idea what this is. Ooh, okay. Now, that is the cover of a book that I never would have glanced twice at. Okay, so it is called The Lies of Locke, Lamora by Scott Lynch. Oh, it's got a quote from George R.R. Martin on the front. A fresh, original and engrossing tale by a bright new voice. Okay. And they've got other books as well. Is this a series? Oh my God, of course it's fantasy, so it's a series. So it's book 1 of the Gentleman Bastard sequence. Excellent. How many books are in the Gentleman Bastard sequence? Oh, so this was published 2006. 2006, when George R.R. Martin was relevant. Anyway, sorry. Okay, let's read this blurb. The Thorn of Camor is said to be an unbeatable swordsman, a master thief, a friend to the poor, a ghost that walks through walls. Slightly built and barely competent with a sword, Locke Lamora is, much to his annoyance, the fabled Thorn, right? And while Locke does indeed steal from the rich, who else would be worth stealing from, the poor never see a penny. All of Locke's gains are strictly for himself and his tight-knit band of thieves, the Gentleman Bastards. The capricious, colourful underworld of the ancient city of Camor is the only home they've ever known, but now a clandestine war is threatening to tear it apart. Caught up in a murderous game, Locke and his friends are suddenly struggling just to stay alive. Intriguing. Okay, how many pages is it? What have I gotten myself into? Over 500. It's an over 500er, but it's fine. It's fantasy. What do you expect? But yeah, I'm intrigued. Definitely never would have picked this up otherwise. So, The Lies of Locke Lamora. Okay, next, our eccentric aunt and our dull banker. Let's see what you have to offer me. I'm expecting, I think, something a bit like more contemporary, like maybe some bold colors, like illustrative cover. That's kind of what I'm expecting. Is that what I'm hoping for? God, these knots, these goddamn knots. Oh, it's not contemporary at all. It looks very classic. Oh, Travels with My Aunt. Okay, so it's not a romance because the dull banker is her nephew, but that's cool. Like, yeah, different family dynamics, intergenerational bonding. Okay, so this is not a contemporary book at all. It's from Vintage Classics. When was it published? How old are you? 1969. So it is Travels with My Art by Graham Greene, 2 male authors so far. Don't know what that says about me, but it was a blind pick, so here we go. When retired bank manager Henry Pulling and his elderly aunt Augusta are reunited for the first time in over 50 years, she cajoles him into joining her on a riotous adventure that will take the pair from Brighton to Paris, Istanbul to Paraguay. Amidst a twilight society of hippies, war criminals, and intelligentsia, Henry finds a new lease of life from the humdrum of suburbia. Is this like Manic Pixie Dream Girl, but like the Manic Pixie Dream Girl is your elderly Aunt Augusta? Who knows? But this cover is very cool. I do like it. But again, never would have gone to this. Okay, and now on to our rather disturbing book. What am I expecting on the front here? I don't know. Something creepy, some like metaphorical imagery, some symbolism. I don't know. Dark colors. I don't know. Who knows? Okay. Oh, it's dark. Dark colors. Okay, yes, and some strange imagery. What is this symbolize? Oh, I don't like it. It's creeping me out already. Okay, Marabou, Stork, Nightmares. Oh God, what have I done? This is another vintage book, not vintage classics. 1995 by Irvine Welsh. Is Irvine a man's name? Does it have a picture? No, I think Irvine's a man's name. Anyway, what is this? Okay, right, let's see. I'm nervous. Right, Roy Strang is engaged in a strange quest in a surrealist South Africa. His mission is to eradicate an evil predator scavenger bird, the Marabou Stork, before it drives away the peace-loving flamingo from the picturesque Lake Torto. But behind this world lies another, the world of Roy's bizarre family, the Scottish housing scheme in which he grew up, his mundane job, a disastrous emigration to Africa, and his youthful life of brutality with a gang of soccer casuals. What are soccer casuals? People who play football for fun? Oh God. As one world crashes into the other, this potentially charming story of ornithological goodwill mutates into a filthy tale of violence, abuse, and redemption. Oh, I don't know like how much like violence I've read in books. Beyond fantasy violence and like fantasy wars and fighting and battles and things. Yeah, I mean, what was I expecting? I don't know. Although I feel like the level of like disturbance and nervousness to read is still there. It's still there. Yeah, I would never have picked this up. So I am very excited to read this one. Like, I think I will enjoy this one. This one, equally intrigued by. I don't know if I'll like it, but that's mainly due to kind of like if I get on with the writing style, I think. The premise, I'm really like happy about and looking forward to reading. This one, I mean, I should have known. I should have known, but the rather disturbing, I couldn't help myself. But we will see how I get on, and I am fully letting myself DNF any or all of these. But I think I'm going to eat the frog, i.e. the biggest one. I mean, if it was emotionally eating the frog, it would be this one. But I'm going to eat the frog lengthways and start with The Lies of Locke, Lamora by Scott Lynch. Okay, I am 120 pages into The Lies of Locke, Lamora, and I'm not gonna lie, it has been a slow start. So much so that I don't actually think I'm gonna finish all of these books in time for when I want to post this video, but we'll figure that out another day. It's immediately giving me very Oliver Twist Dickens vibes, but just in a fantasy world. Although I don't think we've seen any magic. So is this a fantasy world without magic? It's just some other far off place. I don't know. And I'm enjoying it, but I'm not gripped in terms of big picture. We're 120 pages in and we're still getting the lay of the land, and our characters, the gentleman bastards, Locke Lamora and his street urchin thievery pals scheming, like you're seeing some of their like plans like happening, and you're getting a bit of their backstory, but there's been no like big inciting incident that has like taken characters in a new direction, or like what is this big war that the blurb talks about. I don't know, I'm 120 pages in and I'm like, are we still doing exposition? Are we still setting the scene? I need a thing to happen that changes the course for what is happening to these characters. It feels quite slow. But one thing I do really love about this storytelling, even if it confused my brain at first, but I feel like I've got it now, is it jumps back and forth in time a lot, and it will do it mid-scene. So you'll get like a scene playing out, it'll end on a mini cliffhanger, and then it'll jump back, sometimes only like a few hours before, to like the characters prepping for whatever like the scheme, the scam kind of thing is that they're trying to pull off. And so then that before scene will then give you some more context in terms of like what is happening and what is going to come next. And I really enjoy that jumping around with the narrative, and it really reminds me of the TV show Black Sails. Whenever there was like a big thing that our characters had to pull off, like a plan with lots of moving parts, and they're trying to like be sneaky, there was a lot of double crossing, a lot of twists and turns. Oftentimes the way that the TV show would tell that story is you would like see it playing out, but then there would be a voiceover from one of the characters like explaining the plan to another character, and it kind of chops back and forth between the plan happening and them planning it. And that is what is happening here as well. So you're simultaneously getting them planning it and the execution, but then it moves back and forth between the two. So you're like, oh, is the plan going to be executed properly, or is there gonna be something that happens that means that it goes off course? Who knows? So that's kind of cool. Also, watch Black Sails. It's an incredible TV show. So I'm gonna crack on with this, but I feel like it's gonna take me a while, and I still feel like I'm waiting for a thing to happen. Although this Thorn of Camor, this like mystical character thing, has been introduced, and the way that that's been done already feels like a bit of a fun twist to me. But I'll say no more because I don't want to give it away, but also I feel like I barely know what's happening. The other thing I'll say, so far, this book I don't think has passed the Bechdel test. There are two named female characters so far. One is a noble woman who is trying to do her own little thing, and she kind of uses her sexuality and like her flirtatiousness as part of her power. Fair play to her. And then the other woman is someone that we haven't seen. She's entirely absent, off page, but clearly has a very big impact. Maybe romantic, like maybe she's an ex, I'm not entirely sure, haven't quite figured it out, of Locke, maybe? Anyway, she's not there, she's got no agency or lines of her own, and it's in her absence that she is impacting the men characters. So that just feels a bit like, okay, here we go again to me. So I'm hoping we get some more women characters. Bechdel test passing, please. Because, you know, girls can be thieves too. We can, if we had to be. That's another reason why it's feeling very like Oliver Twist Dickensy to me as well. But we shall see. Just a quick little update to say that I am 200 pages into this book, and I'm finally in the flow. I think I got into the flow around 180 pages. Took a while, but I now feel like I'm in this story. I'm intrigued. I care about what happens next. Something happened that puts a spanner in the works. Something that changes the business as usual vibe that I was getting from that first like 100 or so pages, where I was just like, what is happening here? Why do I care? But now there's a thing that's, what are they gonna do about that? I don't know. I also feel like with big books like this, once you get over that hump, or maybe you DNF it before you get over that hump, but if you do persevere and you get over that hump, then the reading becomes faster, and also because you're more invested, I feel like I'm just going to be picking up the book more often, and so I'll get through it faster because I'm actually like, oh, I have a spare 5 minutes. I'm just gonna read a couple of pages, or like 5 minutes. It must be like a page or two for me. So yeah, here we are. I'm enjoying. I'm in. It still hasn't passed the Bechdel test, but there's another female character that has been introduced, and I quite like her. I'm enjoying her characterization a lot more than the other ones that were introduced, but no women have talked to one another yet. I am about 350 pages into this book and my heart is racing. It feels like our Locke Lamora has hit rock bottom, although I do not trust that this author is going to like actually take him even further down. Like, oh, it's brutal. Like, everything is going wrong in the worst ways, in ways that I was not expecting it to go. I am stressed. I'm stressed, but in a good way, because I am firmly locked in, and there's like 200 pages left of this book, and I'm like, what? How? Like this is a series. There are more books in this series, so what is gonna get resolved? What is gonna happen? What is gonna be like the cliffhanger? I don't know. But around page 320, we did get a scene that passed the Bechdel test. And I'm gonna shut up about it now, because just for my own personal enjoyment of the book, I just need to let that go and just accept that this is a book about men and boys, like 90% of the time. 97% of the time. But I'm very much enjoying it. It is taking me a while to get through. One, because I don't get that much time to dedicate to reading physical books, and then two, when I do, I'm just a slow reader. I think the other reason why I'm just like enjoying it now and I'm fully in it, and I was just like a bit resistant at the beginning and confused at the beginning, was this war that is mentioned in the blurb. And this is why I sometimes just don't read blurbs, because I think they can set false expectations. But I thought it meant a literal war, like between nations, countries, like that kind of war. But it's more of an internal war, conflict within one city between rival powers, like the gangs, but then also like the establishment, like the official power in the city as well. And once I, again, just accepted and realized, oh, okay, this is like a battle like within this place. Although I have a feeling, because other places do get mentioned, that perhaps that's something that gets explored in subsequent books, is the kind of like broader political landscape of this fantasy world. Ooh, also there is magic, or there are at least like fantastical elements. We've met a certain kind of person that has like sorcery, magical abilities. We've met some weird animal type creatures, and then there's also just like, I don't know, softy magic going around, like a sciencey kind of magic. Like there's this like alchemy thing going on, and a lot of things are alchemical, and like potions and poisons and that kind of thing that do all sorts of stuff. So it very much is a fantasy world, but it's a different kind of fantasy world that I'm used to reading about, where the like magic system, basically like Brandon Sanderson, where the magic system is such a focal point of the narrative, where in this it isn't so much. But I'm enjoying it. I'm very stressed. Things are looking bad for old Locke Lamora. I finished The Lies of Locke Lamora last night. Didn't even get time to film another update because I was just powering through the last like 150 pages. Ooh! Okay, this book, we got off to a slow start, but my god did it turn me around. And it was a real page turner, as they say. Our main character, Locke Lamora, kept getting himself, like every 50 pages, he was getting himself into like a really bad situation. Like I honestly thought, this is the end. He's gonna die. And every time he managed to get out of it, but it's so well put together that I couldn't see how. I was like reading it and just going like, oh my god, like how is he gonna get out of this? Like I know because it's a series that he is, but I just couldn't figure it out. I was just like, oh my god, like I genuinely, like it felt, ooh, the stakes were very, very high and very, very believable, which I love about a book. Unlike in ACOTAR, when Farah is just like, I was going to die, I was dying. And I'm just like, no, you're not, bitch. Whereas Locke is just like, yeah, this is happening, but woo! My goodness. The like structural and narrative things that were going on at the beginning in terms of like the flashbacks and the way that scenes would play out, where you would flashback just like half an hour and go back and forth, that kind of stopped. So it was kind of strange that the beginning I didn't enjoy so much because of the pacing, but I did enjoy the kind of playing with time back and forth during the kind of like heisty moments. But that must have really like messed with the overall pacing, because I found the pacing of the second half of the book, where you weren't jumping back and forth so much, just to kind of be like really intense. And it's just quite strange. Like, I don't understand why the whole kind of like structure of the book like changed halfway through. I guess authors can do whatever they want. It had a very satisfying ending, although I was kind of expecting it to end on a real cliffhanger. There's definitely things that it set up for the following book, but it's not like Her Majesty's Royal Coven or like Mistborn kind of cliffhanger at the end of the book. It kind of just resolves everything and then puts people like in the places, like ready for the next story is what it feels like. But thoroughly enjoyed, although it did take me a month to read this because I'm a slow reader and I don't often get time to read physical books. I can get through audiobooks a lot faster because I have more time to listen to them. So I'm worried now about how long it's going to take me to finish this reading vlog with my other 2 books. Granted, these 2 together are like the same thickness of Locke Lamora total. So I'm going on holiday next week. This one definitely feels like more of a holiday read than this monster, but I think I'm gonna go with this one next. My reasoning being is because I think this one is the one I'm most likely to DNF. And so if that's the case, I can give myself like a week of reading it now, which will give me enough time to know whether or not I'm gonna DNF it or take it on holiday with me. You know, just because if I'm gonna DNF it, I don't want to have wasted bag space on holiday with this one. I am nervous though. Although this one was quite gruesome, quite violent towards the end. I mean, throughout most of it, but like especially at the end, my God. But because it's kind of a bit more light-hearted, even though there is lots of like gruesomeness and death, there's this light-hearted and also like detached fantasy kind of feeling, so it didn't like bother me so much. Although I did read out a line aloud to Dan in bed last night. I was like, my God. No spoilers, and also content warning for like really quite bloody violence. He soared at the windpipe until the neck was half severed and great rivers of blood were flowing on the deck beneath the men. Yeah. But we'll see what kind of gory violence and creepy horrorness this one provides. So actually, after I initially bought these, I went to meet my parents in the park with Rowan, and they recognized these authors, whereas I was like, who? But Irvine Welsh wrote Trainspotting. I have not read the book, I have not seen the film, but I believe that's also quite violent. But also looking at the titles of other books that he's written, you've got Trainspotting, The Acid House, Ecstasy, Filth, Glue, Porno, and then some other ones. So I'm like, okay, they all sound lovely. And then Graham Greene, also a famous author. My God! Sorry, I just opened the page of also by Graham Greene, and look at that. Look how many books this man has written. Do I know any of them? I honestly don't know. Wow. No, I don't recognize any of them. The End of the Affair, maybe? I don't know. I think I might have seen that in my local bookshop last night. Okay, we are going to start with this one. I'm nervous. I'm sorry, but what kind of a first page is this? If this is going to be the whole book, I do not know if I'm going to be able to cope. How the hell am I supposed to get into this? It was me and Jameson, just us, on this journey, this crazy high-speed journey through this strange land in this strange vehicle. Just me and Sandy Jameson. Like, why? What is this? Is this the whole book? Is this normal? There's a lot of all caps. What the fuck is this? Why? Oh no. Okay, let's go. Okay, I'm 8 pages in and I have clocked narratively what the weird formatting of the text is doing. So feeling pretty good about myself as a reader. Actually very curious about this. It seems like the main text is him telling in like the present tense a story like of what's happening to him and this Sandy, but in reality I think he's in a coma in hospital, because all of the small text is when he's like conscious enough to hear like what the nurses are saying, but he's refusing to stay with them, and he's like going back into whatever this story he's telling himself. Is it real? Is it not? I have no idea. Alright gang, I have been at this story all week and I've got 100 pages left. We're going on holiday tomorrow morning. It is very unlikely that I'll finish it before going on holiday, but this is 100% getting packed. It's so funny to me how I was scared going into this because of the cover, because of the blurb, all of it. And then also when I saw the first page with the weird formatting, but oh boy, am I in. So this book, there are 3 different layers of storytelling and narrative like happening simultaneously. Our main character, Roy Strang, is in a coma, like mysterious circumstances. We don't know yet how and why he's in a coma. So that's one layer, but it's the layer that we get the least amount of information about. And then there's this other layer where he's telling the story of his life. So we're getting flashbacks to childhood, and then as he grows up into adolescence and becoming a young adult, and we see all of that happening in Scotland on a scheme which sounds like it's like a housing block council estate type of place. And then there's also like this brief stint where the family moves to South Africa. And then the third layer is his kind of like hallucinating story, daydreaming, like coma dreams kind of thing going on. It was like unclear at the beginning if it was real or not, but it's becoming more and more abstract in the way that kind of dreams change constantly in front of your eyes or in your mind, and you know you can like move from place to place and things don't make sense at all in dreams. Like the way it reads is very much like a dream. Like things happen that you're like, what? That's not real, that's not possible. And so it's kind of like it's pulling him up and then pulling him down between these 3 different states. And so the craft and the storytelling in this is just so captivating. It's completely got me. I'm like, I want to know like why he's in this coma, like what happened. I feel like it's gonna culminate in that. But also, our man Roy, not a good person. And this is where the things come into this book that I was like, ooh, which is like around the violence and the abuse. Like if you are thinking about reading this book, there is like child sexual abuse in it. There is sexual assault, there's misogyny, racism, homophobia, like all of the things. Like, and our main character and the people that he's like closest with are all like so misogynistic. A lot of the stuff is really quite jarring at times to read, but it's well written enough that everything is really believable for the characters and who they are and where they live, and with stuff around class and patriarchy and like all of these things like make sense that the characters are the way they are, even if you wish they weren't. And then also the way that the dream of like trying to hunt down this Stork thing in his like coma hallucinations is happening. It kind of feels like he's trying to redeem himself. He almost like knows that he's a bad person. So I don't know what's happening there. Very curious to see. The other thing is that so much of the text is written like in a Scottish accent. So the character is from Edinburgh and him and his family are all very working class, and from the way that it's written it seems like they've got very strong Scottish accents, and so sometimes it can be quite hard. Like I almost have to like do a Scottish accent in my head in order to like read it and like make sense of what is being said. And also it's one of those books where there's no speech marks. There's no speech marks, but I'm still finding it really easy to follow without that grammar involved, and even with a Scottish accent being like written out phonetically on the page. But it does immerse you in it because I'm having to like hear a Scottish accent in my head. And so yeah, it does feel like I'm really like immersed in it with these characters who I find horrendous, not because they're Scottish, but because they are misogynistic, racist, homophobic cunts. Also interesting to do with the word cunt, the Scots use the word ken to mean no, so K-E-N. And I remember watching probably a TED Talk, and it was talking about the etymology of the word cunt, and it has a similar etymology to ken, which Scottish people, I don't know if it's like a Celtic thing, I can't remember, but they have the same etymology, which means like to know and knowledge. And I remember learning that years ago and loving it because it's like, ooh, something that is about the cunt is about like wisdom and knowledge. And then like seeing the word like Ken written like loads of times in this book because they're talking about like, oh, I knew this, or I know this, or like you don't know nothing, like blah, blah, blah. So like the Ken is being used so much, and all I can think about is cunt when I'm reading it. So that's fun. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I'm completely captivated, even if there are many moments that just feel like, ooh, that's like quite difficult to read, but it is exceptional storytelling, and I have no idea how it's going to end. Hello, holiday reading update. So I actually managed to finish Marabou, Stork Nightmares before I left, literally like 10 minutes before we had to leave, and Dan was running around packing and getting everything sorted whilst I was just there like locked in. The final like third quarter of that book was a lot darker. It was very difficult to read, and I've never added content warnings to the story graph, which is the app that I use to track my reading, but that's something that you can do, like readers can add content warnings. I've never done that before, but with this book, I did it. I just feel like people should be prepared going into this book that there is a really horrific rape scene, and then following that is a really horrific court case for said rape, which, as you can imagine how it goes down in the 1990s, not great for the victim. And so even though as I was reading it, there was like a part of me that had hope still, but I was like, no, obviously not. But damn, this book. I don't want to give too much away about it, but it was just overall a very disturbing book. The ending especially was very disturbing, maybe cathartic, I'm not sure. I think one of the great things about this book is that there is so much space for discussion. I feel like some people might find the ending very cathartic, other people very conflicting, confusing, disturbing, or like all of the above. And the other really interesting discussion piece that I find, which would make this a great book club book if everybody is happy to read such a kind of dark book with lots of depictions of sexual violence in it, is how we feel about the main character. There is this kind of like redemption arc that he starts to go on towards the end, and I felt reading it very conflicted because there was a part of me that was rooting for him and was feeling sorry for him because a lot of his actions were because of the circumstances of his life. Like, rapists aren't these random monsters who are people who just choose to be like horrific people and do horrific things. Like, the society that we live in creates those monsters. And also, using the term monsters is not useful because they're just the people that we find ourselves living amongst. So when it's a book about this boy growing up in poverty and the things that he experienced in childhood, and then you see the way that his world works and what happens to him and what he does and the choices that he makes, and then how he reacts to those events, it's like you hate him, you feel sorry for him, like all of these conflicting feelings. I feel like the way that men and manhood and masculinity, especially like working class masculinity, was explored in this book was really great. And even though it wasn't like a pleasant read, just the writing craft and storytelling was so good that it is a book that I would recommend, but I would like recommend it very carefully and with all of the content warnings. And to me it felt clear that the author was telling this story as the way the world is rather than the way the world should be. But yeah, that was an experience, especially because I was really rushing at the end. And I genuinely did have to look up if Marabou storks were real. Like, are these a real bird? I'm not entirely sure. And even the ending, I was like, is this real? I don't know. I think it was. I finished that one. Not easy towards the end. But I feel like this is going to be a good palate cleanser after that. So, Travels with My Aunt, Graham Greene, set in the 1960s, or written in the 1960s, so feels like it's set around there. I'm already like a few chapters in, and yes, we start with our man Henry's mother's funeral, but the tone of the whole thing is very light, very whimsical. We've got this eccentric aunt who's got lots of stories, and also kind of find out this in the first chapter, but Henry's mum, who's just died, he finds out from his aunt is not his biological mum. Still a mystery who his actual mum is. My money is on the aunt and her sister, like, covered for her because she wants to have this life of travel and adventures, and having a baby to look after, having a child, being a mother was not part of her plan. But we'll see. I feel like that will be a mystery that is resolved by the end, but it doesn't feel super urgent, and it's like our main character found out that his mum wasn't his mum and then was just like, okay, all right, I guess that's my life now. I guess that's the truth. But yeah, so far enjoying, although I feel like I'm a bit confused just because of the time period that it's set in and was written in. I'm like, there's references that I think I'm missing. There's also like stuff around gender and race that I'm not quite sure what the author's intentions with that are, because I'm not very confident in my knowledge about that time period, but also like, is the author reflecting that or subverting it, or like, I don't know. I don't have enough like historical, cultural context to be able to make my own judgments on like what is going on in this book with regards to gender and race and things like that. But we'll see. Maybe it'll become clearer. I think this book is quite funny. I'm getting funny vibes from it. Oh, and there was a mention of Havelock Ellis, who is an English sexologist who I studied at university. So I was like, oh, that's a name I know. And our main character Henry is in his 50s and his aunt Augusta is in her 70s. So there's also just something that I quite enjoy about reading a book about people who are older than me. I feel like I spend a lot of time reading books about people my age or younger, so I'm excited for this whimsical travel adventure, intergenerational bonding palette cleanser after those nightmares. As you can see, I am back home. I have about 10 pages left of this book. Apologies for the lack of reading updates in this reading vlog, but I was on my holiday, so sorry, not sorry. I was hoping to have finished this, and I even brought a whole other book with me, very optimistically, but didn't even get to the end of this. But had a lovely time hanging out with my family, doing all sorts and playing games and whatnot. So time well spent, even if I didn't finish my book, but I only just got back from holiday today, and I'm probably gonna finish this in the next like 10 minutes or so. So here we are. This book has not gone the way that I expected it to at all. The eccentric aunt is also involved in lots of illegal criminal activity, and she's kind of roping old Henry along, but he doesn't quite know what's happening at the beginning, and he's just like, why does my aunt have a red suitcase full of cash that she's taken from London to Paris and is now meeting some random men in her hotel room? I mean, I maybe should have guessed that. I forgot in the blurb that it says amidst a twilight society of hippies, war criminals and intelligentsia, so there we go, but I'd forgotten that part. The book is still very charming and funny, but it hasn't made me laugh out loud. It's not that kind of funny. It's kind of more funny in the kind of bizarre and ridiculousness of the whole situation. The feeling of not having the full historical context of this book has continued. I would be really interested to know like what a book like this would have been received like at the time, and also Graham Greene's own politics and intentions with it. The Wordsworth, who is the black character who's like in a relationship with his aunt, but also kind of like a servant, but also a lover vibes. He's doing his own thing a lot, but then also the aunt character treats him as disposable, and he's also part of his aunt's like whole illegal activity and like drugs and things. And so I'm like, what message is he giving here? I don't quite know. The aunt also tells like loads of stories about all of her travels and all of her lovers, and she's very like sexually open and sexually free, having lots of affairs. And I do find it really interesting that this is like a woman in her 70s like sharing all of this and still being a very kind of like sexual woman. I think that's very, very cool. And again, was that maybe even more radical when this was published in 1969. And then also I think I spotted maybe a lesbian couple or maybe a trans male character, but of course many of those labels that we have now in 2025 are anachronistic when it comes to people who lived like decades or centuries ago. I was reading this on the beach with my dad there,
And after I read it, I was like, Dad, does this read to you the same as it reads to me? And he was like, yes. So our main character is in a pub on Christmas Day, and there's other military people in the pub, and then there is Miss Truman who works there. And it says, Miss Truman interrupted us to take my order. Perhaps to encourage her customers, she was wearing a paper cap, vaguely military in shape but yellow in colour. She was a large, boisterous woman who liked to be called Peter. I wonder why she likes to be called Peter. The little restaurant had always seemed too small to contain her and her partner as well. A woman named Nancy, who was timid and retiring, and perhaps for that reason showed herself only occasionally framed at the service hatch. So we have Miss Truman, apparently a woman who likes to be called Peter, who works in this pub with her partner, Nancy. What does partner mean in 1969? Business partner? Work partner? I really doubt it meant romantic partner at this point. I personally read these two as being very clearly in a relationship, and Miss Truman, aka Peter, is in fact a trans man. That's how I read it. Other people might read it as Miss Truman or Peter being a butch lesbian and Nancy being a lesbian too. Like, who knows? Up for debate. Doesn't really matter, but I've just found it fascinating that that was in there, and it just makes me curious as to, like, yeah, again, the author's politics. Like, the author clearly knew what they were doing, but I don't know if the author meant for Henry, the character, to know, because Henry's just like, oh yes, Miss Truman likes to be called Peter and has a partner at the pub called Nancy. Like, what does Henry know? Does Henry know? Because I feel like the author and the reader know. They're like winking and nodding to each other. Does Henry know? It's 1969. What does Henry know? He's lived a very sheltered life at the bank and then in retirement with his dahlias until his aunt has shown up and taken him under her wing into the criminal world. The mystery of Henry's birth mother has yet to be revealed, if it is ever going to be revealed. It occasionally gets brought up, but not in any kind of huge way. I honestly don't know how this is going to end, and I like have 10 pages left, and I'm like, is he gonna go back to suburbia? Is he gonna stay with his aunt? I don't know. Is his aunt actually his birth mother? I don't know. Is his aunt in a financially abusive relationship with this war criminal? That's the vibe I'm getting. And I feel a bit protective of Aunt Augusta, but is that just me infantilizing her? And in fact, she's a perfectly capable criminal herself. Right, I'm going to crack on and finish this book, and then we're going to wrap up this whole experience of having blind dates with these books and my overall thoughts and ratings of each one. It feels like a lifetime ago that I read Lies of Locke and Lamora, but 10 pages, let's go. End the way that I expected it to, and in fact it kind of just took a darker turn, and again, 2025 reader as opposed to a 1969 reader, but still I can't give it away, like, no spoilers, but if anyone has read this book and wants to talk to me about what happens in the end, like, I'm outraged. I feel outraged. Everything about this book until those last 10 pages was kind of like, fine, yeah, okay, this is like charming, whatever, and then, excuse me, and it ended so abruptly as well, and so I don't feel like I've got time to process my outrage, and I'm not sure if I'm outraged at the characters or outraged at the author. I'm not sure. I'm feeling very differently than how I expected to feel at the end of this book. Fuck. What the fuck? Graham? What the fuck?
Okay, we're back. Finished the books. Okay, I want to summarize my feelings about these books and rate them, and then also compare if I think that the descriptions that were given on the wrapping is accurate to my experience with the books. So the first one I read was The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. This one I think was my safest bet in terms of my taste because I like fantasy. Although the fantasy in this book is very light touch, and I don't know what the technical genre term is for that, but it doesn't have like your Brandon Sanderson style magic system that is kind of very key to the characters and key to the plot and the story. The magic in this like is relevant, but also you kind of don't really learn about it until like a good way through, and there's only actually one person in the whole book that can do magic, but there's other like little fantastical things that just like aren't based in our reality. So that was a different kind of fantasy reading experience for me. And also I definitely would never have picked this book up based on this cover, but it did not disappoint. I loved this book. It did take me a while to get into, and I felt like the pacing in the first third of this book was a bit off and I wasn't really getting it. Not getting it in that I didn't understand what was happening. I understood what was happening, I just didn't understand what the point of any of it was. And then things start to happen and really pick up in the second half of this book. I loved the characters in this, a little band of thieves, and there's some pretty violent scenes in here, but you do very much understand why the characters are doing what they're doing, and also like the world in which they are operating in. And even though they do some pretty horrific things, you're still rooting for them because we love a criminal underdog. The female characters got better later on in the book, but they still left a lot to be desired. But the book isn't really about them, it's about Locke. It's about the gentleman bastards. And our mystery off-page girl who keeps getting mentioned never materializes. So I'm kind of assuming, hoping that she becomes an actual character in future books. Even though I did really enjoy this book, reading the rest of the series isn't super high up on my like priority TBR list. One of the things that I felt this book was very good at was high stakes peril. The amount of times I thought Locke was about to die, like actually I could not see a way out. Just chef's kiss to the writer, because I was like actual fear. And overall, I gave this a 4.5 stars. Like it didn't quite hit the 5 because of the female characters, and the beginning bit just was a bit off for me in pacing, but was this a good book. And I want to have a look at, I kept these. So it was described as professional liars, a Venetian fantasy, adventure, gritty and flamboyant. And yeah, I do think that this is a good description. I think when I read Venetian fantasy, I thought it was literally set in Venice, but no, it's fantasy. So it's set in a fictional place, but the whole location, you can really picture it as like a gritty Victorian era Venice. Sorry, I don't know what that era is like called in Italy at that time. Was Italy even a country then? I feel like it was still states. That was pre-unification. Anyway, but there's so much description of like the barges and the canals and buildings being like up above water. So yeah, I did really enjoy that location. So Venice is a good description. Next up, we have Marabou, Stork, Nightmares by Irvine Welsh. This was definitely my riskiest wildcard choice out of the 3 based on the descriptions. I wouldn't have looked twice at this book. I probably wouldn't even have been in the same section of the bookshop that you would find this book in, but it completely won me over. I was honestly captivated from the first page, despite the weird formatting. I completely was like, oh, that's what's happening, got it, cool, interesting. I've not listened to it, but I do think it could be quite a cool audiobook experience too, with the different like layers of consciousness that are going on in the book. But this was a hard read, mostly because of the depictions of sexual violence in this book, and then a court case after that too that was equally hard to read. It's just full of a lot of really heavy and not pretty topics. I really had a great summer read here, you know? It is a book about escapism, but not one to read if you yourself are looking for an escapist read. This does make me genuinely interested in reading some more Irvine Welsh, but sporadically. I think if the rest of them are as kind of hard and like on like really real, heavy, awful topics, it might have to be a like 1 book a year kind of thing. But if you've read any other Irvine Welsh, have you read Trainspotting? That's one of his famous ones. Let me know if you would recommend, or if you have any particular favorites. And I also gave this book 4.5 stars, despite it being quite horrific. It's hard to say like I enjoyed this book. There was some enjoyment in the like just being in a story, but yeah, there was definitely a lot of pages that I was reading where I was like viscerally not enjoying myself. It's really interesting how books can do that to you, how you can be like having a horrible time because of what the book is depicting and showing, but you're still like, fucking great book. What is it about reading that does that? Or just storytelling in general in all of its different forms. But the descriptions for this one were hallucinations, Scotland/South Africa, risque, blackest humor, rather disturbing. So yes to rather disturbing. I don't know if I found this book funny. Did I find this book funny? I mean, if there was humor in it, it would definitely be very black humor. Risque, I don't know how I feel about the word risque for this book. Like, it was definitely a risk reading it, but like risque. I don't know, my like interpretation of the word risque is like a bit raunchy and sexy and fun. That's not this book. It's not. But it's like maybe risque in terms of like incredibly taboo. There's a lot of very taboo things depicted here, especially like in terms of who the main character is and whose eyes we're seeing the story through. And that leads us to Travels with My Aunt by Graham Greene. I think this one was the biggest surprise in terms of what I expected to get based on the description versus what I got. I think I was fully expecting a rom-com. I don't think I clocked that the description of like eccentric aunt was the other character's aunt. Anyway, I probably should have figured that out. I was just like, they're just an aunt. Whose aunt are they? Irrelevant. But this one was not my fave. I didn't know what to make of it most of the time. It was funny and charming, but also kind of boring. And then the ending just completely threw me, as you saw from me just shaking my head in disbelief reading those final pages. It just didn't fit to me. Like, everything that had come before it, like it just felt like it flipped everything just in the last 2 pages for no reason. I'm so confused. Or maybe I was just really hoping for a particular ending and then that definitely didn't happen. So I gave this book 3 stars because I didn't hate it, but interestingly, out of all of them, this feels like to me the one that I most want to talk to other people about. I feel like there's a lot in here in terms of how people would read what's happening very differently, and the ending especially. So weirdly, liked it the least, but want to discuss it with others the most. And that's why I think book club picks are so interesting, because a book club doesn't necessarily have to be a good book, but good discussion could come out of bad books. I don't actually think this is a bad book. I just didn't vibe with it. And this one was described as eccentric aunt, dull banker. I don't know why my brain like immediately thought that there would be like romantic entanglement between the two of them. Like, I didn't clock that the dull banker was the nephew in this description. I was just like, it's just another character. Travel, comedy, subversive. Yeah, that feels about right. There we have it. There we have it. Have you ever bought one of these like blind date with a book books from a bookshop, and what did you get? What was your expectations versus the reality of reading it? I'm honestly surprised and also quite pleased with myself that I actually finished them all, because I was allowing myself a DNF in this. But this actually felt like quite a refreshing reading experience for me, because I find myself online a lot, especially on Book Talk and YouTube, and in my Patreon Discord server where everyone's talking about books and stuff as well. I feel like I'm constantly reading things based off of internet recommendations, which is great because I've read so many great books that way, but you can get into a bit of a situation where everyone's reading the same books and everyone's recommending the same books. And this for me was a way of reading some books that I had genuinely never heard of before. And so that was really cool, and actually something that I might do again, especially if I'm in that mood again to kind of go out of my comfort zone and like pick something that is a bit of a surprise. Definitely overall positive experience. I mean, we've got a 4.5, a 4.5 and a 3. Not bad. And I would never have picked up any of these on a bookshelf if I had seen them. So, hey guys, maybe we shouldn't be judging books by their covers. Maybe the people that say that were right all along. Thank you so much for watching. Would love to hear your thoughts in the comments if you've done a blind date with a book thing, or if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them too.
And thanks again to Skin and Me for sponsoring this video. Don't forget you can use my code WITTONYT8 to get your first daily doser for £4.99 rather than £24.99, plus a free trial of their cleanser, moisturizer and sunscreen.
I hope that you're all doing well, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.